with a better person, one of my favorite people on the internet, someone you should all be following, Deb Fillman from The Reason We Learn. She has a YouTube channel. She has a Locals. That's all in the description below. Deb is an educator, a homeschool advocate, is doing so much amazing work with helping parents to navigate how to homeschool their kids. And she has lots of opinions on the fight against critical race theory and where some parents might be going a little wrong, but it's not their fault. They just don't know how to navigate the system. But thankfully, Deb does know how to navigate the system. And so I think we're going to have a great chat today about, if parents want to get in this fight, what do they need to know about how the system works? And is it enough to just go to the school board meeting and give an impassioned speech? Is that going to do anything? Well, Deb's going to have some opinions on that. So Deb, welcome to the channel. So glad you're here as always.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate the opportunity.
Of course. So where would you like to start with this whole discussion?
Well, I guess I'd like to preface this by saying that I'm speaking to parents primarily. I'm speaking to parents on the assumption that we have the shared goal of protecting children in America from ideology that we deem as harmful to them personally, but also to the country, that we don't necessarily want to propagate bad ideas that undermine our civil liberties and our system of, what was supposed to be self-governance, et cetera. And that we were hoping that public school was actually owned by the public. And since we're forced to pay for it and our kids are at least compelled to be there or somewhere else, we can't just not do anything. And that I'm speaking to people who have that shared goal of protecting the kids from bad ideas, but simultaneously getting them an education of skills they need to have. And then if that's our goal, I think we have to think about what we do as parents, like where does our power lie? And the reason I want to talk to you is I think that parents that I'm seeing going to school boards, we've seen all the videos, a lot of them have gone viral, have a mistaken impression of where their power lies. I think there have been some pundits that have misled them. I think there is a really outdated point of view that, when I say outdated, we're talking decades and decades, probably pre-Department of Education. That's how long ago. View that school is local, that all power is local, and that if we just go to our elected school board and tell them what's what, we're going to have an impact. And while that might have been true decades ago, if it were even true then, it is absolutely not the case now. And I really want parents to be able to focus their energies, their intellectual capital, their money, their time, everything in directions that will actually be effective. But here's something else that's equally important: not counterproductive. Mm-hmm. So there's kind of two pieces. Like, does what you're doing have a chance of success at achieving your goal of protecting your kids? And will it backfire on you? So the reason that I say it's not going to have a chance of being effective is that if you look at the statutory and constitutional authority of the local school board, it simply isn't in existence. It does not exist in 48 of the 50 states over curriculum. Okay. So if your concern is critical race theory curriculum, critical pedagogy of any kind, the school board is not the place where they didn't choose the curriculum to that level of granularity. They maybe put a rubber stamp on a budget. That's it. They don't look at all the books. They don't look at all learning materials. And the only in Vermont and Connecticut do they have any kind of granular say like that. And even there are state standards up above that dictate what's going to be taught in the state. Mm-hmm. And to a greater degree than ever in our history, these state boards, often informed by nonprofit organizations, activist groups, teachers unions, are adopting state standards that require critical theory like pedagogy in the classroom. Okay. And so, not only do they not have the power over the curriculum, they're a superintendent, because they do have a power over a superintendent. School boards hire and fire superintendents, or at least recommend the firing of superintendents if they're going to fire them. Mm-hmm. The superintendent is then tasked, that is literally their job, with doing whatever the state says they're supposed to do in terms of standards and curricula. So if your state, New York, California, Massachusetts increasingly, has a state standard of equity curriculum, it doesn't matter how much you yell into the microphone. It doesn't even matter if you fire the superintendent. Okay, maybe he resigns because he's sick of hearing the pressure or he doesn't want to deal with it anymore, but they're just going to hire somebody else who is literally tasked with doing the same thing. And you're going to have to start yelling all over again. So if your concern is curriculum, the school board is not the place for you to go. You just have no power. Now, people might ask, but Deb, they're there and they're saying things. And then we saw that school boards adopt a resolution. Oh, we have adopted a resolution against critical race theory. Okay, when Congress adopts a resolution that we're not going to use the term mother, or like, or when Congress
non-gendered language birthing
whatever,
people.
when Congress resolves that they're going to do X, Y, or Z, does that have the force of law? No, it doesn't. School boards are not judicial or even quasi-judicial bodies. Okay, they take their oath as Justice and I talked about today. They take their oath to represent the district, not you personally, mom and dad. And so when they have a school board meeting, they are having the meeting in public because that's required by sunshine laws. So you see what they're doing with your money primarily, or what they're doing like with certain rules and regulations about physical safety and physical plant, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So mask debates, yeah, they do have some say if it's not a state mandate. But when it comes to, your public comment period, you do not have a First Amendment right to have public comment period.
Right.
You don't. You just don't. That's a gift. Like, if it's not on their agenda to be talking about critical race theory or talking about this book you don't like or that lesson plan that you thought sucked, then they don't have to listen to you. They do it. And if they want to cut it off, and you might think they're jerks, but they're there to do the business of their agenda. So if you're there to talk about their agenda, they're probably more likely to hear you. But if you're there to talk about something that's not on the agenda or that they have no power over, they're volunteers. They don't get paid. And please don't hear me defending the individuals on school committees. Because the other thing I want to say is, remember, they're a microcosm of society. They represent your neighbors. They represent your, the electorate in your district, which is probably pretty diverse, right? So they're probably going to be anywhere from 10% to 50% to 100% of them disagree with you. So what you might be getting in terms of scowls and we're cutting off public comment, all this might be because they just ideologically disagree with you, not because they're not going to do what you want when they have the power to do it. It's because they don't have the power to do it. And the last thing they want to do is listen to people they disagree with yammering on and getting airtime. Right. So that, they don't have to give you that airtime. They're not going to give you that airtime. And now what happens if you step forward? Now we get to the ineffectiveness part. It's just not going to be effective to do what you want to do.
Right.
Now we get to the part about the counterproductive part.
Hang on. Let's put a pin in the counterproductive part for a second. It's okay because I want to dig into the ineffective part a little bit, because I think that, you got to be honest, like seeing some of these videos come out of school board meetings, like people get really revved up. It is. We watched that entire school board meeting from Notamas after they fired that Antifa teacher. They were going to fire that Antifa teacher, whatever ended up happening there. It felt really good. And one of the reasons I think that this is an important conversation to have is just because things feel good doesn't mean they're actually productive at achieving the goal. I think that there's something to be said for energizing people, showing people that it's possible to go and stand up for what you believe in, spreading the message for what you believe in. But that doesn't mean that it's actually going to equate to action. And if you're just going and speaking at this, please tell me if I'm getting this wrong. If you're just going and speaking at the school board meeting and then you're going home and saying, I did my good deed for the day, that's probably not enough. Am I wrong?
No, you're correct. And even to those who say, oh, that's not all I'm doing. I'm building bigger groups to go to school board meetings, or we're putting together materials to go to school board meetings, or we're running for school board. We're going to take over the school board. It's like you're running for dog catcher. I'm so sorry. I wish I had better news for you, but they just don't have that kind of power. So you'll find out, as Justice did, and even as Paul Galato I talked to a couple weeks ago, you find out that the amount of good you're going to do as one individual in there, when you're not even allowed to talk to the people on the school board, that not in public, and you don't know how anyone's going to vote till you vote. And remember, because the power is so limited, and because the only thing that have power of these really tiny things, the people who get into that position are also potentially going to end up using it to do whatever the heck they want, or they're going to be stymied by all the other people who want to spend, 4 hours talking about the mascot of the school. And we can't, okay, we took away, it's not a Native American image, but what are we going to rename it? And, that's not even on the agenda, but that's what they want to talk about. And there's nothing you could do. And it doesn't have anything to do with what you care about. And now you're volunteering hours upon hours of your time and energy. And you can't talk about it with your family, and you can't talk about it with your friends. You can't talk about it publicly, to do nothing, to spin your wheels. A better protest would be for everyone who is on a school board who disagrees with what's going on in education to resign, like simultaneously up and leave and do a mass walkout of school board members to showcase how little power they have. Like, I'm sick of being a bump on a log who gets yelled at when I don't even have the power. Okay. So that would be a more effective form of protest there. But you're right that it's cathartic. And let's talk about the Natomas thing, because that's one that's a little gray. School boards do hire superintendents. Superintendents do hire or make sure that their schools are staffed with principals. Principals then go and they're through their HR departments, but interview and hire teachers. Okay. It's kind of like layers of an onion or so forth. And so if you have a teacher down at the school level with Mao on the wall, okay, and Antifa flags and teaching this, let's get real. The principal knew. There's no way. There's no either he was stoned in his office all day long every day, or he knew. So the principal knew, other teachers knew, everybody in that building knew. And that means there's a high likelihood the superintendent knew. So if the parents are going to the school board and saying, you got to fire this superintendent because the buck really stops on his desk. If he's got an incompetent principal who allows a radical teacher to be radicalizing students year after year, and the guy had been there for more than a year, okay, then he has to own that. It doesn't matter. He claims he didn't know, then you know what? He needs to be replaced because he should have known, because that's big. And also the principal underneath him needs to be replaced. So in other words, we've got a serious problem here. And what you guys can do is get rid of the principal. Okay. But before he goes, you need to get the resignation of this teacher. Okay. So that they could do. And then using the rest of the meeting, as long as they were willing to listen, or give you the airtime, that's perfectly fine if they're willing to do it, to say what you want to say and get it off your chest. And because that was really, really bad. And that's a staffing issue that goes well past the ideology in the classroom. That's a staffing issue. That's an incompetence issue. And yes, they do hire the superintendent. And at a certain point, it's kind of like General Milley. We'd all like to see him, out the door, right? Okay, well, whose job is that? Oh, right. Okay. So at a certain point, the buck stops on someone's desk. And that would be the superintendent. If you've got a principal who's that out to lunch.
Right.
Okay. So that's a gray area. But I'm talking about the ones like Ohio, like Hudson, Ohio, where you have a mayor who has no jurisdiction over a school board and no jurisdiction over the schools. And the school board certainly doesn't have jurisdiction over the 12th grade AP English class.
Right.
Specifically, to go in and start threatening people with legal action, whether it's civil action or criminal action, for distribution of pornography for an optional reading prompt book of 642 reading prompts for 12th graders in an AP class, which is a college level class. So they're either already 18 or being treated like they're 18.
Yeah.
Look, I'm the first person to say, get the sex out of 5th grade and get I wouldn't give that book to 8th graders. But to 12th grade AP English students, considering there are probably 600 other prompts that are perfectly fine.
Right.
I might dog ear the pages and tell the kids, like, don't do these. I don't want to read them and you shouldn't really write them. I might, maybe make the book. I think the book was optional, but I certainly don't think that anybody there, that's not a fireable offense.
Yeah.
It's just, it was like, you want to talk mountain molehill. So it was a really, really bad example